Mate, look forward back again. Think I solved my technical problems. I really hope I can get Glib Medley back on the show. I haven't spoken to my mate Glib in a long time. So I've figured it out technologically. Good old Glib. And would really like to get you back on the show. Here's some Jared Taylor talking with Nicholas Wade. Back again. I think I solved my technical problems. I really hope I can get Glib. Here we go. I'm going to pull it together now. Believe me, it's going to be great. It's going to be better than ever. We're just going to take this show to the next level. So just solve my technical problems and come back even bigger and better ever. Everything's working out. Blessings. Everything's kind of working. Right. Bugs get in the way of our pursuit of learning the higher matters. All right. That a profound change in human social behavior should evolve in just a few centuries may seem surprising, but it is perfectly possible in light of the experiments carried out by Dmitry Belyaev on domestication. His experiments on breeding both tamer and fiercer rats. Belyaev was a Soviet scientist who believed in evolution despite the anti-genetic views of Trofim Lysenko, which were then the official doctrine in the Soviet Union. So, a remote institute in Novosibirsk, he began to test his theory that ancient farmers had domesticated wild animals by a single criterion, that of tameness. All the many other traits that distinguish domestic animals from their wild forebears, such as thinner skulls, patches of white hair, floppy ears, had been dragged along in the wake of the selection for tameness. Okay, that's interesting.
For parents to either through embryos.
Why does that sound so weird?
Seen, of course, and the hope is they'll tell us how the brain works. But this is a very complicated issue, and these alleles will provide just one piece of the puzzle.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. But my sense of the work in China is that
the liking in Asian countries, China particularly, and also India, for male children.
Okay, that weirdness in the audio was not on my end. Aha, not all mistakes in the world are because of faults in my character. Such
children as opposed to female children. So this is a kind of sort of interference in nature by aborting the female infant. So at present, China has a large excess of young males, which is, very hard on them because many won't be able to find wives. It's also demographically destabilizing, and historically what countries do when they have an excess of young men is to send them off to war.
Yes.
So this is an extremely undesirable outcome by any standard. So applying this to the possibility of germline genetic engineering, I think it's a sort of big red flag.
It's not so bad not having any women around. You have more time to devote to books and to the study of great ideas. It's like this channel there. Hardly any women ever come by this channel. It's 95% male. It's been that way for years. And we have a great time. All right? Yeah, the occasional woman comes by, but we don't have to depend on women for our happiness. We don't have to get all destabilized and revolutionary because there are no women coming around. Our ability to make love to a woman does not dictate our ability to enjoy this great world that God has given us. We could just have a bunch of blokes here just standing around discussing modern human evolution, and there may be 0 Sheilas in the chat, and that's okay. We don't have to white knight. We don't have to water things down. We don't have to try to be more personable. We can just keep it real, bloke to bloke. It's not so bad, guys, believe me. So he began by selecting silver foxes for tameness, taking the remarkable gamble that he would see within his lifetime a change that may have taken ancient farmers many hundreds of years to accomplish. Yet, Within 8 generations, Belyov had bred silver foxes that would tolerate human presence just 40 years after the experiment had started. With 30 to 35 generations of breeding, the foxes were as tame and biddable as a dog. Okay? So it just took 40 years of breeding. And just as Belyov had predicted, the tamer foxes had white patches on their coats and droopy ears, even though these traits had not been selected for. So, for example, I mean, think about blokes. Okay, some blokes kind of select women on the basis of breast size. And what comes with that is you tend to get women who are more into loving than mothering, all right? Big-breasted women tend to be more neurotic. They tend to be less faithful. They tend to be more R-selected than K-selected. And so when you select women for big breast size, are more likely than not to get a lot of highly neurotic women into your life. And that's just science, guys. You may not like it. That's science. You can consult the learned works of Edward Dutton for more information on that. So generally speaking, smaller breasted women are more emotionally stable. They are more likely to be K-selected rather than R-selected. They're more likely to be faithful. They're more likely to be mothers than lovers. That's just science. I am just sharing with you science, and I hope you guys aren't anti-science. All right. Belyov's work, which did not become known outside the Soviet Union until 1999, demonstrated how quickly a profound evolutionary change in behavior could occur. Assuming 25 years per generation, there would have been 24 human generations between 1200 and 1800, plenty of time for a significant change in social behavior if the pressure on natural selection were sufficiently intense. In a broader sense, these changes in behavior were just some of many that occurred as the English population adapted to a market economy. Markets required prices and symbols and rewarded literacy, numeracy, and those who could think in symbolic ways. Characteristics of the population were changing through Darwinian selection. England found itself in the vanguard because of its long, peaceful history, stretching back to at least 1200 and probably long before. Middle-class culture spread throughout society through biological mechanisms. The genes were changing. All right, back to Nicholas Wade talking.
To go very carefully. I think anything that parents do is probably more likely to be benign than anything that any scheme that governments might have in mind. And yet, does one really want to allow parents totally free choice? If we could get together a package of good health alleles, say, which we could insert into every embryo, it sort of seems hard to object to that, except that if everyone does it, then you might be inserting an unwelcome genetic uniformity into the human genome. That's sort of something to bear in mind. And of course, the other thing is the sort of usual slippery slope argument. Once you've allowed genes for health, then you'll allow genes for sort of beauty and intelligence and other desired qualities. All this could be very dangerous. I mean, if everyone tries to make their child into a Superman, you get a very unbalanced society. And think how appalling.
Okay, I'm going to figure out this whole muting, unmuting, Streamlabs OBS thing. I'm gonna figure it out yet, and it's going to be great. Believe me, it's going to be amazing. All right. Economic historians tend to see the Industrial Revolution as a relatively sudden event, and their task as being to uncover the historical conditions that precipitated this immense transformation of economic life. Yes, we're back. But profound events are likely to have profound causes. The Industrial Revolution was caused not by events of the previous century, but by changes in human economic behavior that had been slowly evolving in agrarian society for the previous 10,000 years. This, of course, explains why the practices of the Industrial Revolution were adopted so easily by other European countries, the United States, and East Asia, all of whose populations had been living in agrarian economies and evolving for thousands of years under the same harsh constraints of the Malthusian regime. No single resource or institutional change, the usual suspects in most theories of the Industrial Revolution, is likely to have become effective in all these countries around 1760, and indeed none did. Okay, so may the spirit guides of my Aboriginal ancestors keep us on the paths of goodness and mercy. All right, so let me play you into the dream time. Okay, you guys ready for a little bit of dream time? Here we go. Okay, this next piece is something that Mozart wrote particularly for the didgeridoo. It's the only work for the didgeridoo composed by Mozart, and to me this is like the pinnacle of Western civilization. So let me just draw up my notes here. Okay, this is by Mozart. I have to give Mozart the credit. I am just an instrument. Okay, Mozart, this is for you. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. That's just a little piece that Mozart composed for the didgeridoo. I don't know why white racism has tried to hide that particularly moving piece, which I think just sums up so much of the human experience just in those few notes, like the whole Sturm und Drang, like from birth to death. It's all summed up there by Mozart in that piece that he wrote for the didgeridoo. Okay, Gregory Clark has corroborated this mechanism of natural selection by devising an independent way to check it based on the prevalence of surnames. Surnames being passed from father to son are effectively propagated like the Y chromosome. They track male genes. And okay, I was reading the wrong section. That leaves the question of why the Industrial Revolution was perceived as sudden and why it emerged first in England. Contrary to Malthus's gloomy prediction of a population crash induced by vice and famine, which would have been true at any earlier stage of history, incomes on this occasion rose, heralding the first escape of an economy from the Malthusian trap. Look, Vox Day, you say don't smell petrol from a can, but that's my cultural heritage, and I kind of resent that you would be so racist. I like to keep my petrol in one of these so it keeps it sweet. I strongly discourage sniffing the petrol, the sour petrol, but if just use the sweet crude. I like the sweet crude, and really cleans out the sinuses. Did I ever tell you guys about how I was tutored in the didgeridoo by Ralph Harris? So I know that a lot of people think Ralph Harris is a bit of a dodgy character, and he may have made some mistakes, but when Ralph Harris was instructing me in the didgeridoo, he was nothing but a gentleman. So Ralph Harris did not put me off the didgeridoo. Ralph Harris showed me how to blow his didgeridoo. And it was that whole relationship that made me the man that I am today. There may have been some excesses here and there. I guess if you look at it with your patriarchal Western morality, you'll go, oh, he shouldn't have done that, and he shouldn't have done this. But overall, I was better off for getting the hands-on Ralph Harris instruction in blowing the didgeridoo. It's like a bad day's fishing beats a good day's working any time. And even like the worst of didgeridoo lessons from Ralph Harris, I mean, they're far more powerful than like piano instructions from the greatest professors of music. Okay, so the output of the English economy became visibly larger. All right, English workmen contributed to this spurt as much by their labors in the bedroom as on the factory floor. Just like Ralph Harris, when he instructed me in the didgeridoo, wasn't always just in the classroom, all right? But wherever we went, even if it was just the two of us in the outback, no one else around to kind of get in the way of blowing the old didgeridoo, like, made me a better man in the end. Okay, Glib, I've worked out the technical problem, so see if you can come back into the Zoom, and maybe we can blow the didgeridoo together. No homo, bro. The rise in population that made England's exit from the Malthusian trap so visible was an unrelated event in Gregory Clark's view. It had no part in causing the escape, but merely amplified a process that was already underway. Yeah, when are the Aborigines going to discover their Jewish heritage and make Aliyah? It's there's a famous casting director in Hollywood and acting teacher, and he tells his students that, like, everything that you need to learn about Hollywood, you can find it in my didgeridoo, and all you have to do is coax it out. All right. I got this didgeridoo very reasonably priced, just $30 on Amazon, and it said it's not made in China. So I believe I'm supporting like native Aboriginal artists through this purchase. Okay, guys, we got Glib Medley coming on. He's going to do a musical medley for us. Clark attributes this process to women's perception that the once substantial risk of death in childbirth had dropped substantially since the 17th century. See, guys, there are no women around. We got 22 viewers, no Sheilas, and we're just having the best time. We're just having the blokiest bloke time. It's we don't need to measure our self-worth by making fierce love to women. All right, we can just get together with blokes here and study the text. All right. You need to, you need to have a compartment where you keep your woman, but there needs to be like a big old compartment for getting together with blokes and talking about the sacred text. All right. So in 1650, a woman who had the average number of children had a 10% chance of dying in childbirth. That'd be a bit of a bummer. This formidable risk had dropped to just over 4% by the early 19th century. 1650, 20% of women never married, and the perceived risk of doing so would have been a rational deterrent. By the early 18th century, the proportion of spinsters had fallen to 10%. It's awesome. I am not a Kohen, so I don't have to marry a woman who's a virgin. I could even marry a prostitute. I mean, my options are wide open. I could marry a crackho, right? And I could reform her and turn her life around. This and the trend to younger marriage propelled a 40% increase in English fertility between 1650 and 1800. Clarke's thesis departs considerably from the mainstream views of economic historians and political economists who look to institutions to explain major issues such as world poverty and the Industrial Revolution. Economic historians, Clarke writes, inhabit a strange netherworld. Their days are devoted to proving a vision of progress that all serious empirical studies in the field contradict. They are thus trapped in this ever-tightening intellectual death spiral. But we have our weaknesses on this stream. There was the prophet Hosea who married a whore, and that was because God told him. Just like God told me, Luke, go into the porn industry and write a history of X. Okay, we have our weaknesses in this stream, but we are not trapped in an ever-tightening intellectual death spiral. Instead, we're trapped in an ever-tightening intellectual upward thrust. That's what's going on here. Gregory Clarke's book was widely noticed, and many reviews were critical. But who cares about the wankers, right? Who cares about the wankers? As long wankers are not a protected class yet on YouTube, right? We're allowed to mock the wankers, right, without getting deplatformed. Okay, so Clarke found a permanent rich elite. Oh shoot! There goes my didgeridoo. Survives in perpetuity. Okay, let me get a handle on things. Play a little more from our mate Nicholas Wade.
It would be if we lived in a society where everyone had an IQ of 150. I mean, such a society would drive itself into ruin in just a few generations, I would expect, given how intellectuals often espouse far-flung theories which have disastrous consequences.
Well, that's very interesting. I had not thought of making the parallel between this germline manipulation and this excess number of males in China. But as you suggest, that is a very interesting red flag to be raised. When people are left to their own devices, they sometimes make choices that they think are good for them, but that end up being very bad for society. At the same time, although American...
All right, back to our text. The surname evidence confirms a permanent selection in pre-industrial England for the genes of the economically successful and against the genes of the poor and the criminal. Their extra reproductive success had a permanent impact on the genetic composition of the later population. Clarke's data provide substantial evidence that the English population responded genetically to the harsh stresses of a Malthusian regime, and that the shifts in its social behavior from 1200 to 1800 were shaped by natural selection. The burden of proof is surely shifted to those who might assert that the English population was miraculously exempt from the very forces of natural selection whose existence it had suggested to Charles Darwin. Yeah, I'm just dropping truth bombs here as we're trapped in this upward thrust of ever-tightening intellectual excellence. Evolutionary changes in China. In China, no equivalent data exists to track changes in social behavior through the generations, but the population clearly fell under intense Malthusian pressure as population density increased. Between 1350 and 1850, population expanded from 65 million to 430 million. The only checks on growth were the Malthusian constraints of high infant mortality and of malnutrition, which lowered fertility. Female infanticide was a principal means of birth control, with the results that many men could never find wives. Hope you guys have appreciated the $2,000 that I have spent on voice lessons to give you this superb new voice quality. Very exciting. Now I can project like through brick walls. The harshness of the struggle was made no easier by Chinese inheritance practices, which left an estate to be divided equally between the owner's sons. Each generation, of few who are lucky or able might rise, but a vast multitude always fell, and those families near the bottom simply disappeared from the world. Says Ron Unz. Okay. At each population cycle, the Chinese became enriched in survival skills, but they didn't really develop originality. At the same time, authoritarian regimes ruthlessly repressed dissent, just as they do today. This particular set of pressures has borne down on the population for 2,000 years or some 80 generations, with the evolutionary outcome that has made the Chinese a distinctive population. High intelligence may be one of the behaviors shaped by China's Malthusian regime. Chinese score above Europeans on IQ tests, as do the Koreans and the Japanese. They are also highly conformist. The long arc of domestication has not yet trapped me in an ever-tightening spiral. Ooh, guys, we have a guest. This is very exciting. Whoa. Glib Medley, sir. How are you?
Luke!
Mega dittos.
You can hear me.
I can hear you. You're coming through. Everyone can hear you, Glib.
Is that true?
It is. This is so exciting.
Okay, man.
They're going crazy in the chat. They're going crazy.
All right. Well, they can't get to see me today because I'm sweltering in the heat, kicking back. Nah, chat doesn't get to see my chest hair today. Sorry, guys.
Do you have air conditioning?
I do, but I don't like to use it in general. I got these holistic principles, and I'm cheap as well. And I generally save it till the nighttime. So I've got my overhead fan and a small fan.
A lot of things that you say for the nighttime, Glib, but we won't go into that.
No doubt. I save the best for you, though, Luke. You know that. No
Thanks,
homo.
bro. Yeah, no homo, bro. You have touched me in a way that no woman ever can.
Okay. To the soul.
To the soul.
And
that's what
to the very
counts.
nub.
So, do you play any musical instruments, Glib?
Nope. I enjoy listening to music. I guess I picked up a saxophone when I was in junior high, but it didn't take too well. And I guess I did buy a keyboard, but I wasn't able to get too proficient at it. Didn't have the discipline, I'm afraid. Didn't put in those 10,000 hours like Malcolm Gladwell says is all you need.
So, what do you think of my didgeridoo? Does it touch your soul?
How'd you learn to play it so fast? Because when you first got it, you were just blowing air.
Well, what I did is I found like a YouTube video of didgeridoo sounds, and then I just make my eyes bug out really big, and I make it look like I'm playing it, but I'm just playing a YouTube video.
Wild, man, just wild. So what's the deal with this Zoom? Because I'm looking at my screen, and all I've got is the profile picture of you. And I guess I need to put up a profile picture because I'm looking at my laptop with the actual stream. and it's a little disorienting because you're talking through it, but it just says my name Glib on it. So yeah, I guess I got to become more proficient at this thing.
Yeah, me too. I've got a lot of disproportionate fears, so I've been working on my character defects, Glib, and there are 5 character defects. There's selfishness, self-seeking, inconsideration, dishonesty, and disproportionate fear. And so I've been working on my fear, and one of my major fears that's operating in my life is fear of technology, fear of computers, fear of having to learn new technology, fear of things going wrong. And this fear has been so severe that most of my hair fell out.
Where did the 5 fears come from? What school is this 5 fears based on?
The 12 steps.
Okay. And have these always been around, these 5 fears? Is this in the big book? Where did these come from?
Yeah, I believe they're in the big book. There are 5 character defects, of which fear, meaning disproportionate fear, fear beyond what you should fear, is a character defect. And it's somewhere in the big book. I could probably give you the page, but I've been working on getting precise about how these disproportionate fears have harmed my life. So we're talking about Zoom now, and yeah, I've been struggling to learn Zoom, integrate it with my Voice Meter Banana and Streamlabs OBS. So this is a work that I was reading to my sponsor this morning. Fear of technology, learning new technology, how it serves me. It helps me to stay focused on what I do best and avoid wasting time, and it helps me to stay safe and comfortable. How this fear hurts me: it constricts my life, it reduces my ability to live with joy, to learn with joy, it causes me anxiety and anger, it warps my sense of reality, it reduces my ability to be of service to others. And then what would it be like if I came out of the character asset of faith? That would help me to expand my life, reduce my anxiety and unhappiness and anger, and it would allow me to open my mind so that I could learn with more peace, with more joy, with more happiness, and be of more service to other people. What do you think?
What about the fear of Luke Ford? Is that a reasonable fear?
Well, it would depend on the context. I mean, yeah, in certain circumstances, you saw me in a certain state. Not you, but one saw me in a certain state. It could be a very fearful thing. I mean, people have cowered when they have seen me at my most manly and aroused. It can be an absolutely frightening state. On the other hand, like, what if I say something negative about someone? What if I was to poke a little gentle fun at one of the regulars on my chat? So it's only if the fear is disproportionate to the reality.
I think if somebody's got a good set of boundaries, they can handle you a lot better. If they don't have any boundaries, then
yeah.
they're going to go into places they didn't want to go.
Yeah,
they're going to feel violated.
Yeah, that's true. Like, my girlfriend said, you like to pick on like simple girls, innocent girls, and take them to a very dark place. I like them innocent. Yeah. God made me this way.
Right. Yeah, well, I try to work on my fear through my yoga practice. I've been doing a lot of inversions this year, really developing my headstand and my handstand. Going upside down, I think, is a conquering of sorts, and it feels great. Feels great afterwards. So, been in good health with that, and but yeah, there are fears one gets in the city. You get detached from nature, I think, and unreasonable fears can set in when you're in an urban environment.
I'd like to help you overcome your fear of black people, Glib.
Yeah, that's going to take a bit of work. No, that's fine. That's fine. I don't know how you would go about helping me with that. I mean, I guess I could be like Daniel Senkowitz,
yes,
you just
I've got some videos that will help you work through these fears.
So it's that's not fear. Yeah. And then there are the other 4 fears. But sometimes what I fear is going on a Luke Ford stream and only talking about 12 steps mumbo jumbo. What else can we talk about?
Okay, so how do you think Trump is doing, particularly vis-a-vis immigration? So sometimes I think that despite his rhetoric, that essentially he is governed as an open borders politician because we have had record levels of immigration since he took office. What do you think about the job or lack thereof that Trump has done with regard to immigration?
Well, it seems like he could have given more of a push on birthright citizenship, right, on the anchor baby issue. It seems like he could have effected something. But you've got these judges that come in and somehow they have the power to overrule him all the time. If he was to do an Andrew Jackson and just say, these people have no real power, I'm going to do what I want to do, then he would. Then the charges that he's a dictator would have some substance to them, not just the fever paranoia of the left talking about it as being a dictator. That would be something tangible. I can't. It's just. I think he's doing a good job overall, but he's just set off these fears on in his opposition that makes it impossible for him to do anything, and at the same time, the Democrats have become an open border party, and that's going to make it harder for them to get elected. So maybe things would be easier in a second term. Or maybe he would just stop caring and just invite Playboy models to the White House. We don't know.
How adroit, how effective of a president do you think he's been?
I think he's been great on foreign policy. I like what he's doing in China and Korea. I'd love to see us get out of NATO and the UN altogether, but I realize that's impossible with the deep state being what it is. But I think he's done good with our allies. Allies hate Republican presidents no matter who they are, so there's nothing different there. On Israel and the Middle East, I'm fine with that, I would give him a B+, and I expect that the Democrats will make me so crazy that I'll be glad to vote for him again, even though being here in New York, my vote doesn't mean anything.
And what do you think about the format shift? I want to shift to a show that's primarily about ideas rather than a show that's primarily discussing the news. I want to shift to a show that primarily focuses on one text, where we go a sentence at a time, rather than discussing Fox News style, discussing talk radio style, but more of a graduate school seminar. What do you think?
Now, why do you want to shift away from current events?
I just realized I was increasingly bored with my own show. I have nothing to say on most news stories that we were discussing, and I don't think there is much to be said about current events because they are so current that, for example, if every pundit, disappeared tomorrow, we would not be harmed. Like, pundits, by and large, contribute nothing. Fox News, by and large, is the news and ideas for stupid people. Talk radio, by and large, it's all about the artificial manufacture of outrage, and then positing the host as he's going to stand up, for the little guy against the big guy. It's largely useless. I find I'm much more interested in the systematic exposition, development, and clarity around important ideas rather than current events. I'm interested in current events more as they apply to ideas, as they elucidate ideas, as they challenge ideas, rather than
thought your problem with current events was that you couldn't be honest under the fine terms and standards of our YouTube host.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. That's why I
So
wanted to talk to you about this.
yeah, so you
This
think
is
if you
one.
went to Drive, you might have more interest because you could be more based in your comments.
I'm sorry, say that again. If I went to
You
D
could be
Live.
more you could be more sincere in your commentary
Yeah.
if you were on a provider like Drive as opposed to YouTube, and that might be of more interest to you because honesty is what you say you're interested in being, and you can't
Yeah.
be honest on this format.
Yeah. Yeah. By Drive, do you mean D Live? I don't know if I
D-Live, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not up on all that, so yeah, D-Live.
But when you look at D Live's terms of service, they are pretty close to the YouTube ones. It's just that they don't enforce them as much, but it's entirely arbitrary. And I mean, for example, D Live kicked Alex Jones off its platform. I'm not an Alex Jones fan, but I mean, do you watch many live streams on D Live? Like, where is the alt-right live streaming these days?
I've never watched a D-Live live stream, not once.
Okay.
I've dabbled in a bit of BitChute, but it's rather slow. And yeah, I guess there was a Way of the World stream I was going to look at, but still haven't got around to it. And yeah, I'm just in the YouTube ghetto, I suppose. Yeah, so I'm kind of I have mixed feelings about the one topic thing. In a way, it's you going back to the original days of alt-right Torah, where there wasn't any commentary about current events, and you had 2 or 3 fine panelists with you. And but yeah, you don't need to go back to alt-right Torah. I think you've done enough in that. But this book, I can't say I'm interested in cracking it. There are other books I read, and I haven't been hooked by this book from what I've been listening to. But you know, I get distracted in the chat, and it seems like the chat and the panel are more bifurcated now in the new format. When it was about current events, you had much more alignment between chat and panel. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's why I wanted to talk to you to get... You have a gift for reality. So often my balloon doesn't really... is not attached to the ground, and it just starts floating away from reality. But yeah, it's true. But let's talk about the book that I've been primarily discussing the past 3 weeks, Ethno-Nationalism, The Quest for Understanding, with 10 being you're absolutely fascinated by every word of this book, and 0 meaning you have no interest at all. Where would you place yourself on a 1 to 10?
About a 4.
Okay. And I think that's pretty indicative for the
I don't
overall
know. I'm the standard bearer of the Lucosphere as far as your audience goes, though I am a staunch loyalist. But yeah, what was Rodney Martin, movement critic? His criticism was that it simply didn't reflect. It was written what, 1970?
The essays in there range from 1966 to 1984.
And he doesn't think they have much, or that they haven't kept up with current trends, though I don't recall him being specific as to where it was regard. It's interesting how it goes into the various aspects of what constitutes nationalism. And I guess what you do is occasionally you'll take a moment out to talk about real world nationalisms and how these theoretical points address on the ground nationalism. So we get to hear about Quebec from Kevin virtually every episode.
Yeah.
And, you know, how much do we need to know about Quebec nationalism and hear Kevin grouse about Quebec nationalism? I'm not sure. It would seem to be the same problem you had with current events, where Kevin would give the same soliloquies and anecdotes, which is okay. Repetition's okay. You can't come up with new things all the time. That's why I don't go on the panel every day. God knows, you know.
So
I get bored hearing myself
yeah.
talking about the same things all the time.
Yeah, so I would like a stream primarily about ideas with various people contributing to the discussion, a little bit like remember the glory days of the alt-right tonight. I remember how much fun that was, where we'd usually have one primary topic in the evening, and we'd kick it around between a half dozen of us. So I would like 3, 4, 5, 6 people discussing ideas with frequent allusions to current events. Like I think some kind of ratio of like 60% ideas to 40% news, 2/3 ideas to 1/3 news, or even 50-50, something like that would please me.
Sounds like a reasonable balance. Yeah, we could go into your your panelists. I think Daniel, I don't know his last name, but he's a fun addition.
And what's your reaction to Kyle? Sorry.
Yeah, right. The Kyle question, the KQ.
Yeah. I think we need to confront it and be honest.
Yeah, there's something about his delivery, even if I agree with him or think I'm agreeing with him, I just tune out. There's something about how he gets to a point that I just tune out by the time he reaches it.
Yeah.
And but I don't have any hate for him. You know, there's a lot of hate Kylers. I think you've lost a lot of your audience because of Kyle, or a lot of good people have left because of Kyle. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, Luke's been running a trick all along by having this guy on. I see it now. He's just playing a game with us. He's not sincere about any interest in real nationalism or the real problems we're facing, because he has this Kyle fellow on, who I guess could be labeled, I would not call him he's a neoliberal. He's not neoconservative. He's got sympathies with some points, but yeah, there's just an attitude that he brings, and the fact that he dominates the panels so much that a lot of good people have moved on.
Why don't you rank contributors to the show from your favorite to least favorite?
Oh, I don't want to I'd be making enemies. Why do I want to do that? They're all beautiful people.
You do that anyway.
I think Kevin's good. Sometimes Kevin gets under my skin, but he's terrific. How can you not like Kevin? And he brought in a lot of people for you, so that's a good thing. Let's see.
Rodney Martin. What do you think of Rodney Martin?
Well, Rodney's fun, but I wouldn't want him on every day. Let's see. Vox Day Respecter. At first I thought he was a bit corny, but he's a fun guy. It's not. I like him in the chat box. I love his streams, but some of the characters he plays leave less to be desired. But he's a lot better than that other guy. You remember that guy who got drunk and did those ancient pagan songs? He would always get drunk.
Yeah. He was not a favorite. Travis Hahn.
Yeah. He would always do characters, and he was terrible at it. So Vox Day Respecter is way above that. And Daniel, that was a wonderful stream you had with Daniel, where what was it, on the Pinker thing?
Yeah.
Where
last Sunday.
Yeah, you a couple Sundays ago. Yeah, you exposed him pretty well, and. But he brings a lot of fun ideas, stuff I disagree with a lot of times, but that's good. It's good to disagree. It shows, you listen to people, you disagree with them, you maybe make a comment in the chat about it, you move on.
Colin Liddell.
Colin Liddell bores the hell out of me. Something so blasé about his style. not a crazy fan. But I did read his Alternative Right website way back in the day. I was a listener of his podcast with Nowicki and Spencer, and those were quite good. Quite good. How long ago was that? 5 years? 6? You know, that was those were proto streams to what we have today in this YouTube environment. Who I left out?
Matt Forney.
He always has the same persona, which that's what he is. He's Matt Forney. I have a soft spot for him because he introduced me to a lot of really interesting websites and personalities before he became Matt Forney, when he was Fernando Bartomeu or somebody like that, a character from a Celine novel. Matt Forney, he's really he likes to stick it to the Protestants on his tweets. He is quite a presence on Twitter. Who's he in a fight with now? Well, he's in a fight. He's always in a fight with somebody, but I guess he's in a fight with good old Mike Enoch. So I would say Matt Forney he's a big defender of the Jews. You know, as far as in these circles, he's decided to throw his hat in with the small hats.
And Ash All Day.
No comment.
And Analytical Chick.
Oh man, you're really dragging. I was actually happy to see the new your new logo, your new what would you call it? Your
new
cover
logo.
image.
I spent $50 on that thing.
I was happy to see it just because it wasn't made by Analytical Chick like the old one was. So that's my opinion on Analytical Chick.
And do you like the new logo? That picture moves me. Forget the Luke Ford in there. Just that picture of all those interchange. I don't know. It has an emotional effect on me.
I keep looking for the hidden Magen David in it. The little I keep thinking there's a Star of David somewhere inside it. So I look for it like a Where's Waldo cartoon.
You'd be a really good talk radio producer.
Yeah. Wish you hadn't said that. I actually had a chance to intern one time in college, and I was too much of a party animal back then to actually go into it. So, yeah, I think I would have been actually, yeah.
Now, this Isaiah guy, Selassie, who's in the chat, Steve Saylor is constantly retweeting him. I mean, he is very sharp.
Yeah. I have nothing against Isaiah. Yeah, I follow him on Twitter. He leaves comments a lot in streams that Glenn Lowry does. And they're always very interesting because he's a real truth teller. A lot of people just want to suck up to Glenn Lowry, say how wonderful he is. But Isaiah's there calling him out, you know, when he's pulling up short. Like, Glenn Lowry, you know, we should be talking about Amy Wax. You know, Glenn Lowry has interviewed her at least twice, and she really brings the hardball to him as far as how things work in academia with affirmative action and everything.
Yeah, I'd love to have 50 Isaiahs in the show. I mean, this guy is sharp. He makes a lot of great tweets. A lot of great comments in the chat, just a lot of very sharp insights. It's like, oh, I hadn't exactly thought of things that way. That helps. What other YouTube streams do you watch?
Well, I'm kind of burnt out by a lot of it. I'll peek into stuff that I used to listen to much more. I enjoy hearing Claire Kaw's voice in the morning, and she's streaming 24/7 now, it seems. And yeah, that's I happened to be listening to her this morning when that news about Daniel came out, and you'd want to talk with Brundlefly to get the details on that. But
Brundlefly is a very talented streamer.
Well, yeah, he is. No question about that. He's a personality guy, you know. He's the guy who's snapping towels in the locker room and cracking jokes, and yeah, he's a real bro. But as far as I had the last time I recall being on a stream with him, it was a Babs cast in the morning. We had a great conversation. So Um, I hope to be on a Brundlecast one day, but the dangers of the e-personality with me. I don't go on too many streams these days. I was on a Jonathan Paul's stream. He won't be streaming anymore for a while because he's moving out of Kurdistan. He might be doing it today or tomorrow, sometime soon. And I've actually been listening to a leftist podcast by a couple of New York women called Red Scare. And they were born, two fine-looking women, born in Russia. And though they have no accents, I guess they moved here when they were children. One's 28, one's 33. And they both have vocal fry. And I despise vocal fry, but for some reason, when these two are doing it, I find it soothing. It's ASMR for me. So I'll nibble on those streams because they're anti-Me Too. And yeah, they have enough contrary positions on the left. They're Bernie Sanders supporters, but they have some very contrary and original takes on things. And they've been canceled by the left. Jezebel ran a hit piece on them, and all of the right people, all the people who forced me to keep quiet in this town, they've offended. So they're fun to listen to. And who else have I been listening to?
What about Otto Paul?
Well, he got this co-host on, James, and James is a hard-talking New Yorker, but he's just everything with him is about Jews doing this and Jews doing that, and I get bored with that. Yeah. You got to have a really fresh take or a very original sense of humor to keep me interested in that stuff. I've heard it all, so I have my own thoughts. And there are plenty of streams. Obviously, there's still plenty of streams for that. They're not big streams, most of them, but that's not where I'm at these days. And but it still comes to you. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Look at that. The Josh Hawley thing blew my mind the other day, right? Where he got called out for using the term cosmopolitan elites. And so the left attacked him for being anti-Semitic because it's a dog whistle to say cosmopolitans. And so he wrote a tweet in defense of what he did, and he kind of went overboard and talking about his love for the Jews in Israel. And so all the alt-right and everybody in the dissident right got on his case. And it's like, man, you can't win. Yeah, and that's where we are right now, yeah? That's where politics is going right now. So it's interesting times. You're not going to get away from the JQ, but I don't need to wallow in it. And at the same time, I'm reading a history book called The Price of Whiteness, Jews, Race, and American Identity by Eric L. Goldstein. And basically about where Jews stood in the racial hierarchy from the Civil War up to about the 1970s. And I can't really talk about it yet because there's a lot to digest, and there's a lot of dual strategies going on, and the usual disagreements, intra-ethnic disagreements among the Jews as to how to find our way in American society. The thing is, the Jews have always been considered the other in whatever society they were in. But when they got to America, there was already another here, the blacks.
Right.
So that's the basic thesis. Where did the Jews? How did the Jews navigate this new condition of otherness, where they weren't the big capital O other? And
What do you think of Otto's contributions on this show?
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll be like Otto. I won't say much more than that. But Otto's got his lane. Otto stays in his lane for the most part. He's good in his lane. He's got his grasp. He's got his. He brings Otto. He brings his specialty. He's not a dynamic personality. Let's say that he knows it. So that's why he has James on to spice up his streams, and it's worked. He has good streams. They're not my cup of tea most times. I'll dip in and dip out, but you can have a good panel on Otto's streams, and Otto can make a good contribution here. I'm going to be glad that he's out of Kurdistan, though, because I'm tired. I don't need to hear about Kurdistan all the time. So,
one thing that's great about Otto is that he's not wordy. He makes his points are usually pungent.
Yep. So, what are you doing to bring more women to the stream?
I'm not. I'm fine.
The didgeridoo isn't going to bring them in, you don't think?
Yeah. Yeah. But wait, I want to get your thoughts. How do I deal with these incredibly restrictive new YouTube terms of service?
Yeah. For all of the talk about Kyle and everything else, that's the real problem, isn't it? That's the nub of the problem. That's because those wild streams you had back in the day, that's why you can't have them anymore, even if you wanted them. Because, you'd be knocked right out. We talked about some wild stuff back then. It was freewheeling. It was good times. Yeah. I don't see that coming back. Yeah. It's... So at D Live, you're going to have restrictions too. So what about Halsey's proposed channel where you'd be able to host streams? How's that looking? He's still working out the kinks, I guess.
I think he's still working out kinks. And so if there was some other place to stream where you could build something, then I'd be willing to switch. And so I am considering D Live, but on the face of it, their terms of service are pretty close to those of YouTube. It's just a matter of perhaps they've got much less enforcement. So therefore, it may be worth switching to D Live and then uploading to BitChute. On the other hand, working within the YouTube system, it does have some advantages. Is that it forces you to make your points in a more elevated way. It kind of elevates the discourse, but you also have to obfuscate and pull your punches. So there are some benefits to these incredibly restrictive YouTube terms of service, but overall, it does feel incredibly stifling.
Yeah, you said it. You could be more sophisticated and nuanced and evasive, but you can't have that freewheeling quality anymore. It's got to be the elevation takes away a lot of the fun for people.
So I was thinking of concentrating on Carl Schmitt after we finish this current book. Do you think you'd have much interest in learning about Carl Schmitt?
I guess I only know of him from what Richard Spencer used to talk about him a bit, and you did the wiki bio of him. I don't really know anything about the guy. I don't read political philosophy. Well, I haven't in a while anyway. So I guess I could bone up on it, and or I could not bone up on it and just be the usual sweet talker in the chat box. So I don't know. I guess he's got some big political theories. He didn't like democracy. He doesn't like. He was an opponent of democracy, as I understand it. He saw the limitations. So
he's a very complex thinker. He's very complex, and so he's also exhilarating. It's a thrill to delve into his thought. For example, one of his famous sayings is, "Sovereign is he who decides the state of exception." I mean, there's so much packed into that one sentence. Sovereign is he who besides the state of exception. And he makes the point that even in a liberal democracy, there are always going to be states of exception, meaning you're going to confront problems that cannot be solved within the rules. And so you're going to have to break out the rules. And so even in liberal democracy, you still will have a sovereign. It's just more hidden. So, for example, with the United States, the president can do anything, essentially, if it comes to an attack on the country, or if he wants to launch an attack, he can send the armed forces. He can do all sorts of things.
Yeah, these were early issues in the Republic. There was no provision for Jefferson to be able to do the Louisiana Purchase, but he did it anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously, to pass up on a deal like that, he would have been foolish. And so, yeah, you wanted that exception to. That exception was a good thing.
And according to the chat, that Stick says that YouTube is weeding out live streams. They want more curated content. I wonder if that's how true that is. It certainly seems to be something to it.
How long have live streams been around?
For some reason, I want to say 2012. I remember my YouTube channel began in 2007, like February 2007. And so I was only uploading videos until 2015. I did my first live streams with Vivian in 2015. And I had a really poor internet connection actually until 2020. I guess it was 2015. Yeah, that was when I got a good connection again, and years worth of streams I was listening to. You and TRS. I would. I think that was the only live stream. No, that wasn't a live stream though. Yeah, the TDS podcast, as it's known today, was never a live stream, or a few times it wasn't worth listening to. But there was no chat going on there. But those are the big podcasts. And that was another thing. I believe, Forney introduced me to TRS back when he was using his pseudonymous handle. And before they had a podcast, when they were just a website, they were just a glorified blog. I'm looking forward to the day when the alt-right kind of settles on a live streaming alternative, because they don't seem to have settled on one right now. And you'd think they'd be able to pull that together. Like Gab, I know they have the capacity, but currently I think they generally limit your live streams to an hour. There's got to be some alternatives, like a BitChute for live streams. You'd think that's got to develop soon. I think, is that the number one problem confronting the dissident right? Because the vlogosphere has replaced the blogosphere. So you would think it wouldn't be that technologically impossible for the dissident right to develop its own live streaming platforms.
Yeah, you'd think with all the techies who are in the movement that something would happen along those lines, but I've not heard anything about that. You need a guy with big money, don't you?
Yeah, but I think BitChute only has one employee, so I'm not quite sure how they pull that off, or if I'm completely accurate in that. But the chat says that live streams for verified accounts with at least 1,000 subscribers began in 2013, which sounds about right to me. And
yeah, I didn't know about them until alt-right Torah came along, and I would never read the chat box. So for a long time, I never read it at all. And I'd be doing other things. Yeah, I would mostly be cooking to you stuff when alt-right Torah was on. And now I don't cook as much. No, I still cook a lot. I have plenty of good podcasts to listen to that don't have chats that I'm interested in being in, that accompany it, or sometimes nothing at all. And Yeah, the chat box is important, though. You wouldn't want a format where you couldn't have that participation going on, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big part of what you're about. The peripatetic Luke Ford, he's tweeting, he's looking at the chat box, he's half listening to what his panelists are saying, he's got his texts in front of him, he's got his didgeridoo, his cricket bat. How you do it, man? How you do it? I don't know.
And what have you been thinking about the past few months of a public national intellectual matter? What do you mainly think about intellectually?
Well, on the local level, I'm glad New York isn't San Francisco yet, but there's always the possibility it could go toward that if de Blasio doesn't win the presidency and get the hell out of the mayor's office. But I don't see myself moving out of the city anytime soon. At the same time, nationally, what have we got? All there is the race question right now. You've got, I could talk current events. This Josh Hawley fellow. I like him. I think he's got great potential. I'd love to see him run in 24. I think he'd be. I'd certainly just like to hear his ideas, if not vote for him. I think he's got great potential. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, so I read all of the crap on Twitter. I wonder if I should get off Twitter because it's just you're up on all the latest news and the terms that the kiddies are using. You can find out all the memes, but as far as developing deeper thoughts, it's not of any particular advantage.
Do you think that it reduces the attention span to spend time on Twitter?
Of course. If I'm on the subway going to work and I'm reading a book, I'm going to come off probably wiser than I do if I'm just scrolling through my Twitter feed. If I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed, I'll probably start the day agitated.
Yeah.
So I think the whole country is like that right now, right?
Yeah. And
we're all agitated. We're in an agitated state. It's not healthy. We're not reflecting. And if you can't reflect, then it makes empathy harder. We have to go into we wind up in these little ghettos, whether we want to or not, where we're rewarded for thinking a certain way. And when we step outside of that thought, we're condemned.
And what do you think of Yoram Hazony's nationalism?
I saw an interesting thread yesterday that I don't think was right, but it was interesting. Some guy was saying that Hazony's nationalism is is not like a 19th or 18th century European nationalism, but rather it's like Baathism. The fascist political movement, a secular political movement in the Arab states that was started actually by Christian Arabs. And he was saying that these Christian Arabs could see that colonialism was ending. And so the protections that this specific minority had under colonialism were going to be gone. So they created this ersatz nationalism in order to protect themselves. And so what Hazony's doing, he knows race is an issue, this guy was saying, and he has to be insincere, the same way these Baathists were insincere by embracing the Arab flag, even though Arabs are most associated overwhelmingly with Islam, not with Christianity. But it was going to be a holding action to keep Islam from being the dominant force. Hazony's trying to keep the people, we'll call them liberals, for lack of a better word, the liberal onslaught, the leftist onslaught that's coming when whites are no longer a majority. by creating this nationalism that isn't specifically about race, but implicitly is, it would buy some time.
Now, I think Hazoni is definitely a contributor to the conversation. I think that on balance, his work is more positive than negative. I think that his book on nationalism was a contribution to our discussion. I'm glad that he held a national conservatism conference. It seemed like there are a lot of race realists who were there undercover. I think he says some useful things, and the guy has 9 kids. He has a think tank that relies on donation. I understand why he has to keep it safe. I don't think we need to require 100% truth from everybody. I mean, we can understand that people like Yoram and Tucker Carlson and other people who know better have to mute themselves and say ridiculous things to retain their position in public life. What do you think?
And yet, for all of his banning of people, he invited Amy Wax, and Amy Wax does not hold back. By the way, folks, Amy Wax is a Jewess, so she was the one who was really willing to say that the country would be better off if immigration was limited to higher IQ peoples, and that would necessitate certain geographical preferences. And for this, the Vox hit piece on her, it seems to be going viral. And he's, and for all of his efforts to avoid the race problem and avoid that sort of controversy, he's in it. He couldn't get away from it in the end. I don't know why he invited her. She's too much of a truth teller. She doesn't hold back.
Yeah, but she is still in the Overton window. She is still published by prestigious journals. She still has a prestigious position.
Barely. She barely held on at UPenn. They wanted to get rid of her. She barely held on because she's got tenure, and I guess, but yeah, she's one of, she could get her fingers caught in the Overton window. I'll tell you, she's yeah, you're right though. She's still in it, but yeah, that makes her the target because she's right at the very edge of it.
And good for Yoram for inviting her. I mean, good for Yoram for holding this conference where people who know more than they can say could gather.
Yeah, that's what people in these parts don't appreciate, that, as long as Ilhan Omar and people like her are present, and they're going to be a growing presence, there's no way that, you can bitch all you want about Jews doing this and Jews doing that, but the Republican Party is going to be a pro-Semitic party for the foreseeable future, will it not?
Yeah, it's fascinating that Trump's critique of these 4 congresswomen of color is that they're anti-Jewish, that Jews have become the avatars of whiteness.
Yeah, I had one woman at work. She's a liberal, but she's anti-feminist and kind of has certain... no, I can't compare her to Amy Wax. Amy Wax is in a league of her own. But yeah, she's upset. She hates the squad. But she also doesn't want to hear all of she doesn't want to hear Trump putting all that talk about anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism up front. There's a whole bunch of Jews who are sympathetic to the Republicans that don't like being used as the mascot ahead of America, that they're more American than they are Jewish. They love it. Jews love America, whether they're right or left, or at least the left used to love America. But no, do you want to see a Jewish president? I don't.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent.
So I think I would prefer that Christians remain in charge of the country. Jews should have a role to play. They're bound to. But I wouldn't want them. I don't see the benefit of this guy. Okay, maybe if it's an exceptional person, I don't know.
Michael Anton is interesting because he regards Steve Saylor as his superior. He made that clear in the comments section. But yet Michael Anton, by playing within the rules, he's been able to serve in multiple presidential administrations. He's a professor at Hillsdale. He's within the Overton window. So Michael Anton is an interesting character.
He's Jewish?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't think so. Yeah, he is. The Flight 93 essayist, yes?
Yes.
And yeah, I would, and for all of the Trump's talk, anti-Semitic talk, what is he doing? He's getting rid of all these, well, I guess he's still got, what's his name? Steve Miller's in there. No, the people I'm thinking of aren't Jewish. Yeah, the people he's kicking out for making real talk. He's got to stand by his people. I mean, the thing that people like about Trump is that he's loyal to his people. And that's why, you get the disappointment when Trump says, "Oh, I'm disappointed with the audience the other night for doing that chant, send her back." You don't want to see that in Trump. That's not a good thing for Trump to have to do that. Where does that go with Anton? Well, what else? I don't know.
What did you think about Trump's tweets? They should go home, and that whole controversy that he stirred up. Also, he set the groundwork for that chant, "Send her back," and he also has given contradictory responses, saying that the people who gave the chant were great patriots. So, what do you think of the whole imbroglio?
Well, it's still early enough. He's doing his A/B testing, seeing what works, what won't, testing the limits. I thought the tweet storm was classic Trump. It went too far, and at the same time, it was brilliant, and only he could pull that off.
Yeah.
It leaves you speechless, Your jaw just drops when you see him going at that level. It's like nothing else, but the damage it's done to personal relationships, is it worth it? I've lost friends. It's just the environment. You go out with a woman, they want to know what you think of Trump. What do you say? Just and yet it's exhilarating at the same time. So it's just crazy.
What about it?
It worked for him, though. It didn't hurt him.
Yeah, it seems like a good political platform to tie the Democratic Party to these 4 congresswomen. That seems like a political winner.
Yeah, they're going crazy over there on the left. They've we've got our David Frenches on this side. Well, he's not on this side. He's a never Trumper. He'll never vote for Trump. So, but yeah, he knows how to create discord. When Marianne Williamson said, "You got elected through hate, and I'm going to lead this country through love," she kind of had something there. I don't know. She's batshit crazy on a lot of things, but his great success is in creating strife, rhetorical strife. He leaves his opponents just crazy. They've just gone crazy. They've gone completely out of their minds. And that's a good thing for him as far as his political viability. It's good for the country because of some of his policies, I think, are helping the country. The tariffs, I think, will work out in the long run. I think the foreign policy is so much better than it was in the days of our wise neocons leading it and Obama's fecklessness. But as far as the overall health of this country, well, no country lasts forever.
Right. And what other books have you read in 2019 that occupy some space in your mind?
Kafka's Last Trial was a fun read. It was about, that Kafka left behind all those papers with the express words to the executor of the estate to burn his manuscripts. And the executor did not do that. And so Kafka's Last Trial is about what happened to the papers. And Kafka, for all you can say about him, he wasn't as crazy as these people. The way people fight over these things and the legacy, and Germany wanted the legacy for themselves, and Israel wanted the legacy, and all these different characters. It was an interesting. It was. It's, if you're into literary stuff, literary ego, and that sort of thing, it was interesting. The most fun thing I read this year was The Princess Bride. I've never seen the movie, but somebody insisted I read it, and it was great for the subway, just perfect subway reading, and a great romp. I've never seen a book where you can enjoy every single character in it, and that was one. If anybody's looking for light summertime reading, I would recommend The Princess Bride. I've read a few texts by these secular Jews who try to reconcile their Jewishness with their secularity. And I can't remember this one fellow. He had a literary journey through his Jew. He would. I can't remember the name of the book, but he was doing critical analysis of all these different Jewish novelists of the 20th century in America, and in the end relating himself to, people struggling with why they're Jewish when they're not religious, and another book along those lines was The Jewish American Paradox, written by a Harvard professor of law who he was a secular Jew and still is, and he had this crazy notion that the way to solve the Jewish problem, since most Jews aren't Orthodox, is that anybody who says they're a Jew should be considered a Jew. But he had a lot of interesting stuff about how Israel goes about defining a Jew. And no, it's not through DNA samples, people. But it was a bad thesis, but an interesting book.
And what do you think about? Well, we'll have to carry on this conversation another time. Any final words, Glib?
No, everybody, eat whole foods, get plenty of sleep, and don't take any of all this stuff that seriously. And it'll get better.
Thanks, Glib. Take care, my friend. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Got to ask you about Melky's journey, so we'll discuss Melchizedek.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Pray for Melky.
Yeah, prayers for Melky. Okay.